It says
Hello. We are doing this live for those of you watching later. That's why our videos are so long, because we answer questions.
Yay.
Today we are talking about...
You are? Oh, sorry. I got ahead of you there.
Well, that's why you're here. What to do when your husband refuses to stockpile.
I will not stockpile.
Absolutely refuses to stockpile. You jerk.
Whoa.
Wow, that got out of hand real quick, didn't it?
I was going to
Have
say.
we been on for an hour or for a minute yet? So
hello, everyone.
This is a big question that we get a lot of times. What do I do when my husband refuses to stockpile and I feel like we need to stockpile? So first of all, why do you need to stockpile? Well, because you never know when you're going to have an emergency. You never know when you're going to have a flood come, like we did in 2013 in Colorado. We literally were surrounded by creeks and rivers that were flooded and could not leave our town. Now, for us leaving town, it was only like 2 or 3 days, but other people in towns nearby, it was like a week or 10 days. Other people that were like 40 miles away up in the mountains, they had to be rescued by helicopters and evacuated. And some people just stuck it out in their houses up there for months.
But the ones that did stick it out in their houses, if they had supplies, they would be able to do that.
They were okay. They didn't have to rely on somebody to come get them.
But actually, something interesting is the ones that did get rescued out of their houses, it was sometimes weeks before that happened. And they would have to make it that long without being able to go to a store or anything.
Yeah. All right. So for those of you who watched Mom's video yesterday, I guess, do not say anything, Mom. We already filmed a video, so this is not about that. We filmed a video. It's coming out Friday on responses to your questions about Mom's disaster house. So just so you know, Mom. Okay. So what do you do? What?
Nikki, I say divorce the idiot and take your dog and build up supplies for you and your pets. Cheers.
Okay. That's pretty funny. Sorry. All right. So what do you do when your husband refuses to stockpile? Take it away, dear.
What? You're making me talk.
Okay. So first of all,
well,
why are you stockpiling?
Yeah. Well, men and women probably have different views of some of this anyway, because men tend to be, I go kill something and bring it home, and women tend to be trying to see how to take care of everything, and when there's a problem, trying to anticipate the problem before it happens and be prepared for that.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times it's just that the husband doesn't understand why it's important to do that. Right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
But it's also important to understand, for you to understand why you're doing that. Because Tara's gotten some criticism from some other Christians that Christians shouldn't be stockpiling. And in that sense, see, I've worked that in there. In that sense, if you're stockpiling, the main reason you would do it in case there's an emergency. And also so that you can not have to drive to the store every time you run out of cinnamon.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Right.
Okay. So take it away.
Okay.
And I'll just throw in my 2 cents every now and then.
So first of all, if you're stockpiling and you're just like, the world's going to end, I got to stockpile. Okay. You can't have that kind of an attitude.
Shouldn't be a fearful thing.
You shouldn't be doing it out of fear. You should be doing it out of taking care of you and your family, and you are preventing a crisis before it happens. I get people, as a matter of fact, I got one on Facebook and I banned the lady because I was like, I ain't putting up with this. That said, oh, I just think it's horrible that people stockpile because all those elderly and poor people, they don't have the money to stockpile. And then all the stockpilers, they just take all the food off the shelves. That's not stockpiling. That's hoarding, and that's panic buying, and that's a totally different thing.
Stockpiling is something you do when there's not a crisis, or at least if there's a crisis that goes on for years and years, then you do it when it's not a particularly crisis moment of that alleged crisis.
Exactly. And the excuse that the poor and the elderly can't stockpile is just a bunch of baloney. They just choose not to.
Wow.
Well, actually,
so here's the thing. My mom lived on $750 a month. She was more than and she's 70 years old. She is more than able to stockpile. Now, there are a few cases, and I would say probably 5 to 10% of the elderly and disabled who are truly so elderly and so disabled that they are not able to care for themselves. I get that. But the majority of people are able to do it. They're just choosing not to.
You can't make an excuse for the one.
well,
Yeah, you can't keep just making excuses. You find ways to do it. Even if it means that you're going to the food bank, you hold back some of that food for later. If you are an elderly person and you rely on the food bank to help you with your groceries every month, that's totally fine. But save back some of that food so that when you need it, you will have it.
yes. What was I going to say? There was something I was going to say about that. Sorry, go ahead. Keep talking.
So really, those are just excuses. Now,
I know what I was going to say. Some people, it's not necessarily an excuse. It's trying to envision doing too much at once. So like, for instance, if you think you can't do it, you might be envisioning doing the whole thing at once. Say for instance, just using the example, somebody wants to be a millionaire. A lot of people say, I just can't do that. And the reason why they say that is because they envision that they have to do something so that by tomorrow they've accomplished the goal. And so that's why people don't, and they don't think they can. And it's the same thing with this, is that if you say I can't stockpile because I'm on low income, then what that essentially means is, I think in your mind, you're thinking, I don't see how I can get to the end because I don't have a very high income. But the idea is you just do a little at a time as you go, so that, buy a few extra things here and there when you go to the grocery store, and eventually it builds up, just like becoming a millionaire. If you want to do that, you have to do something consistently all the time.
So John says, my grandma kept my father alive in the Soviet Gulag.
Oh,
because
that's like the prison camps.
Because she was able to smuggle in sugar and tea in. She died, but they lived. Included trading goods.
Wow.
Okay, guys, seriously, stop whining. There are people who have it a lot worse than you do. And I'm sorry, but there is no reason for you not to have 1 to 3 months worth of food in your house. Even if you live in an apartment, I don't care. I lived in a 250 square foot apartment, and I still had at least enough food for a month. Remember my little apartment in the mountains?
Yes.
I still had enough food for at least a month in my little 250 square foot apartment. And honestly, if I really wanted to, I could have stockpiled a whole lot more. But back then I was living on $300 a month, and I just was doing a little bit at a time. And it was literally just 1 or 2 extra canned goods here and there. But I kept at it and kept going. And so if I would have stayed there, I could have done a whole lot more. So don't give yourself excuses for not stockpiling. Okay, now.
But as far as the husbands go, I would say probably, I think a lot of people have reasonable husbands, and the reasonable husbands don't see the reason why, and that's why they resist. Maybe you have an unreasonable husband, and even if he understood why, he wouldn't care, because he just wants to go out and buy boats and jet skis and things. And that's a little bit different of a story. But for reasonable guys, like when Tara first started talking about, I think we should have some extra stuff on hand and be prepared in case there's an emergency, she kind of was persistent about it for a certain amount of time. And in my mind, I was thinking, she's predicting bad things to happen all the time. And that's kind of the thought I had in my mind. And I think a lot of guys are like that. They think, well, you must be trying to say that you're looking at the negative side of things. And I would say somebody actually, Jay Moore said, got to be sneaky. It's easy. I think that's brilliant. Well, there's a couple things I would say is, it may be that he just doesn't understand, because men are, like I said, generally they're wired, I'm gonna go kill something, that's my job today, then I come back and bring it home and I celebrate the victory. And women kind of think, how can we make sure that everything's going to be okay within reason and take care of the house? And a lot of people don't really want to admit that things are like that, but they are. And so it might be that if he doesn't understand that, it might be useful to explain it in a way that's maybe more gentle. So what I was, I can't recreate it now, but I was telling Tara earlier.
Go ahead, dear. tell me how you should. So I'm Mike and you're me, and you're stupid for stockpiling. We're not stockpiling. We don't have any money. Why should we stockpile?
Well, dear, some things I'm just trying to take care of our family and the house. And, it just really concerns me when I don't feel like there's
That's not what you did
security.
earlier.
Okay, that's right.
Keep going.
I was like, well, honey, it's really kind of important to me that I feel secure in our family. And no, I'm just trying. That's a really terrible way of expressing that. But the idea is, I think in a gentle way to try to get across to him that, I know you're not worried about this, and I'm not really worried either, but it's my job to kind of take care of things and organize things. And I feel good knowing that if there's some unexpected thing, that we have a little bit of time to think about it and figure it out. And of course, a lot of guys aren't going to take that from just talking to them. But when I say that, there are a lot of
well, first of all, change it from stockpiling to I'm just creating a pantry so I don't have to go to the grocery store so much.
Yeah.
I would first of all change it to that.
That really is one of the best reasons.
And that's the reason why I stockpile now. And I started when we lived in, bigger stockpile. I started when we lived in Idaho because we had to drive 70 miles to groceries each way. And at any given time, our road could be cut off on either side. And when a week after we moved there, we literally were cut off from being able to get to town to get groceries. And so change it from you're not stockpiling, you're just building your pantry so you don't have to go to the grocery store so often.
Yeah, Sharon actually says maybe the word stockpile is a misnomer. How about just preparing for winter and being ready for emergencies would help? Yeah, that's true. And kind of what I was getting at, because some people were laughing about that, but it's funny because in the Bible, there are a lot of stories where the guy comes and like, for instance, was it David and what's the guy's name? There's a guy that comes and he's being a dork to King David, and King David wants to kill him. But
it starts with an A.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, well.
Anyway, but he doesn't want to kill him because he knows it's a sin against God, but he wants to kill him. And the guy keeps hassling him and irritating him all the time. And the guy's wife comes and is extra nice to King David and the troops and everybody else. Brings them food and is really sweet and says, I'm, kind of sorry that my husband's a jerk, but we really appreciate you being our king and all that kind of stuff. And because of that, David doesn't kill her husband. And I guess that's what I was getting at.
But then God does kill her husband.
And
and frees her from that bondage.
And then King David says, praise God for basically preventing me from sinning. But anyway, but the reason why I mentioned that is there are a lot of stories in the Bible where, because a woman comes across with a more gentle, explaining in a kind of way thing, she's able to accomplish something that the guy can't when he just comes with his club and says, no.
Yeah. So from Little House Off Grid says they have a year's worth of food stored in their 200 square foot house.
It's Nabal and Abigail.
Yeah, Nabal and Abigail. That's right. I was thinking of Abigail. And so I watched Little House Off Grid. I love him. He's so funny. And he's been showing how he's been canning his chicken and all of this. And they have a year's worth of food in their little 200 square foot tiny house. I mean, it's pretty cool.
Wow, that's pretty impressive.
People don't realize it doesn't take that much food to stockpile for a year. But I mean, just start with a week or 2 weeks or a month. first of all, if it gets to the point where you're going to have to live off of that, you may have to not eat so much food. Now, I know this is going to hit below the belt where it needs to be hitting for some people, but including us.
Wait, below the belt or above the belt?
Well, right in the middle. Yeah, above the belt. Yeah, above the belt. If you are overweight, you're going to have to eat less calories and not sustain your weight if it's an emergency situation. That's just the way it's going to have to be. You're going to have to eat some things that you don't want to eat. It's going to be an emergency situation. Now, get things that you do normally eat, but there are some things like rice and beans that are very good and last a really long time that are good to just have on hand so that you can just make them and just eat that if you need to. So don't think you have to just start doing huge, massive amounts. Just start with a little bit and start working your way up.
Genevieve was asking the name of Rob's channel.
Little House Off Grid.
Yep.
Yes.
That was the thing I was going to say. As far as telling the husband, sometimes, he just needs you to tell him kind of what's going on in your mind that's working for that. But another thing that Jay Moore said about got to be sneaky, I think Tara she wasn't being sneaky in a
I just did it anyway.
deceiving way.
No.
She just did it anyway, and I didn't really notice that she was doing it because guys are like that too. I mean, if the pantry itself is just overloaded and stuff is falling out of the place, then maybe that's the clue. But like Tara, she would just put boxes of things under the bed, and it wasn't that she was hiding it from me. She was just doing it, and I wasn't micromanaging it. But if your guy does micromanage it, then just don't tell him. I mean, the thing is, some people get upset because they think, well, we could be using that money to get a home equity loan and go to a vacation or something. But what they don't know won't really hurt them. It's kind of like when before we moved to this house, when we moved to this house, Tara was looking at the bills and thinking, wow, that electric bill is a little bit high. And I said, well, it's not any higher than it was at our other house. And she said, well, I didn't realize that. And I was thinking, that's because I paid it and I just didn't say anything. And I wasn't being deceptive. I just thought no reason to worry her about that. So if you can't get him to cooperate or understand, you could just do some. And the main thing is when people think, it is true, the word stockpiling, people tend to think that you mean hoarding or that you mean preparing for the zombie apocalypse or something like that. And that's just not reasonable to expect that.
So Ellen says, how do you organize food? So when I buy a new case of peaches, I just put them on the bottom and put the old ones on top. And then I just use the ones from the top. I also write the date in magic marker. A lot of times I don't always get it done, but a lot of times I write the date in magic marker. And you can do however you want. You can put the date that it expires or the date that you bought it, and then you can just calculate from that however you want to do it. Now, Big M says if something as sensible as being prepared for your family is an issue for you and your husband, there's a deeper problem. So that's my next point. If your husband is that much of a jerk and is just really being a dork about this, you have way bigger problems to worry about than stockpiling. And if your husband treats you that badly that he doesn't value your security of having a stockpile, then you have way, way bigger issues. Now, if you're a hoarder and let's say you got crap all over the place, and then you're wanting to stockpile, that's not the same thing.
Or if you like to just go shopping when you're stressed out and you buy a lot of stuff because you're stressed, and it's more like, in that case, you're a shopaholic or whatever, then
that's different.
Then he might legitimately say, why are you buying all this stuff? You're spending too much money just buying things, because he knows that's a problem you have in other areas.
Yeah. So if you don't have your act together, you have no right to get onto your husband because he doesn't want you to stockpile. If you're overspending on the credit cards and going and shopping and hiding stuff from your husband as it is, No, that's not okay. If you are hoarding and you have stuff all over your house and your house isn't neat and tidy and taken care of, and then your husband gets mad because you ask him if you can stockpile, well, he has a good reason not to want to stockpile. He doesn't want more junk in his house. And that's a perfectly reasonable thing for him to say. So if that's the case, you have way bigger problems that you need to take care of for yourself. Now, if that's not you and your house is neat and your house is tidy and you're not a hoarder, that kind of thing, your husband's still a jerk, you still have bigger problems that you need to take care of with marriage counseling instead of worrying over stockpiling. So do what you can and maybe just, get a month. Most people can have 1 to 3 months. I mean, my pantry alone would hold 3 months worth of food easy, and nobody would know any different. But people don't visualize how much 3 months worth of food is. It's really not that much. As a matter of fact, I had thought about doing a video where I go to the grocery store and actually buy 3 months worth of food to stockpile, because it's really not that much. When you go and look at the serving size on a bag of rice, and I think it's a half a cup uncooked. Well, a half a cup uncooked is like that much rice. I mean, it's not that much rice. A cup is this much for one serving. And so, what?
No, I keep thinking of the man things. I don't want to interrupt you because it's almost like I'm going back to the same point as before. But another thing, when Tara was talking about maybe it's a problem with your relationship with your husband, is that there are times where I think when we get married, we think that other person's going to fill all the holes in our lives.
You complete me.
But they actually come with their own things. And I've realized that it's funny because there's the jokes that people say about like fighting over which way the toilet paper rolls or some kind of
That's important. Like that. It goes over the top.
But what I've realized, and I think we should all realize that if we're married, is that some things we just have to let go. And for instance, we did live in a house where we had a wood stove, and I recognize the value of a wood stove. But some things that Tara wanted to get while we were at our house in Colorado, I was thinking, why do we really need that? And that'll just be money sort of sitting somewhere unless there's an emergency, or we won't be able to have that. And there's a point where I just thought, she's good with the money and she's good with a lot of the things, and I don't necessarily understand that part, but oh well, I'll just let it be that way. And I think there are times where trying to communicate with your spouse that there are some things that you don't understand about me, but it's important to me, and because I love you and you love me and I want to be careful with our family, hopefully he could understand that, recognizing that there are probably things that he does that you put up with.
Amen.
Because you don't understand why he does it, but he may have a legitimate reason for doing it. Now, I'm not saying it's a legitimate reason.
I'm still waiting.
Buy too many toys.
27 years on Friday, and I'm still waiting to hear the legitimate part of the reason.
What? Well,
I'm kidding. Go ahead.
And then there's the queen. Just kidding. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Nope, I insist.
All righty. So, I was going to say there were a few things here that I think is kind of interesting. And when I was talking about finding a way for it to become clear to them. Now, one thing, husbands don't like it if you tell them things and then you point out examples and you say, see, I told you, oh, look, this happened over there. But nevertheless, it would be interesting if you can figure out, it's kind of like kids, if you can figure out ways to put them where they see the problem themselves. Like Mame's legacy, my dear heart thought my prepping was just another weird hobby. And see, that's cool. If he thinks it's a weird hobby, but he still just says, well, whatever. I mean, I guess we can afford it and she's not being crazy. Then came the Texas snowpocalypse. He was warm. Our house never dropped below 60. He had hot food and water, and he is now on board. He's having a propane whole home generator installed in our new to us house in Missouri come the end of November, and we installed an off-grid propane stove. So in that sense, he came to see it for himself. And it's kind of like with teenagers, if you tell them too much. You can tell them sometimes, but if you tell them too much, then they'll just resist you all the time. And husbands do that too, because they don't, if it sounds like, if they feel like you're just telling them kind of what to do all the time, then they will resist more. So in situations like that, if it's possible to kind of steer them in a direction where they notice that somewhere, that would be helpful too.
Genevieve says, how do you know if you're hoarding? What's the limit? So the limit would be if you cannot take care of it and you cannot use it. So my grocery store in the basement, I'm always using stuff. I'm always rotating it out. But if it gets to the point where you can't manage it, you can't eat it, you're not using it, you're not managing it, that would be the point. If it's causing issues in your home, like you can't,
well, for
if
instance,
you can't get around,
if you pile pallets of food all over the place in your living room and your family can't walk around in there, that's probably not a positive sign. The other thing is that if you're just terrified and you think this is my lifeline and the only thing that's going to keep me alive, that's really not. It's good to be sort of wise and think, let's be careful and be prepared so that things aren't a complete catastrophe. But at the same time, it's not going to be your lifeline that's going to take care of you forever. And as far as Christians go, I think the problem when some people say Christians shouldn't stockpile, my thinking is the Bible does advise us to be prepared for unexpected things. But at the same time, we're not supposed to put our stockpile in the place of being the most important, our salvation, the thing that's going to save us over God. So, but anyway, as far as this, the hoarding would be more just having a lot of things to where it starts to just really make regular life practically impossible. So the potential for saving up for the future or taking care of the future is making now not a livable experience at all. So like I mentioned, she wasn't stockpiling, but I and another guy rented a basement of a house that this lady had at one point, like 20 years ago, 25 years ago. And
so Mike was working 100 miles from work and he found somebody who needed a roommate. And
she was more the hoarding type. And what she had is like stacks and stacks of newspapers, like from the floor that went up high enough that when I would walk up there to pay the rent, she would say, come in, and I would be trying to walk through this little maze of newspaper stacks and other kinds of things to give her the check. And she was sitting on a chair completely surrounded by things with just a tiny little crack that she could see her TV through that. That would be hoarding. And especially when newspapers really they don't have a very good, they have a purpose where they might be useful for something in an emergency, but really that's just collecting things because you're afraid to not have stuff around you. But what I've seen a lot of people that have sort of stockpiles where it's maybe like a room in their house in the basement or something that's got shelves around it, and they're kind of neatly arranged like a store kind of. And I think that's totally great. And there are some people that have, I think you can't think of this as something that I'm going to just keep collecting and never end. Because if there's a problem, a disaster, really you're only buying yourself time to think about a solution. It's kind of like your savings for, like Dave Ramsey talks about having your savings, or if you have a savings, it's not going to be money that you'll be able to live on the rest of your life. Your savings is designed, well, at least your regular, what does he call that savings? The 6-month buffer or whatever.
Emergency?
Yeah, the emergency fund. So the emergency fund is not meant to be something that you're constantly living on that your whole life. It's meant to give you time to figure out how to restart an income in some sort of way.
It's meant to replace your car when it totally poops out on you and you have to have one right away.
Yeah, and so stockpile shouldn't be, if entire civilization collapses and there's nuclear winter, we're going to stick it out till our natural death. It should be more like if there's an emergency of some sort, and for 3 or 4 weeks or whatever, we don't have a plan, we can then think of a plan. Or maybe it's 6 months or a year. If there was a major financial disaster and products weren't available in the store, you would be able to figure out how to either do without them or how to come up with them in some other way. So that's the
Mhm.
idea. But the other thing on the stockpile, somebody said, who's Kimmy, by the way, so you want to answer that in a minute. The other thing that I think is really cool, I've heard a lot of women that I know who stockpile things like that for their families talk about, was it shopping at the store or having my own store? What do they call that?
Just having a store. Yeah, my own
Basically
store.
something like shopping in my own store. And I've actually had this experience where I'll be in the kitchen cooking something and I'll realize, I used the cinnamon example earlier. Oh, there's no cinnamon, or we're out of cocoa. And I realize I'm already halfway through the recipe. And I think, oh, I'm sure Tara probably has something like that in the stockpile area. So I just go down there and sure enough, there it is. Or if we run out of some kind of medicine or something, the idea is if you take something out of there, then just replenish it with a newer version. And so even when there's not an emergency, it's nice because when you realize I'm in the middle of a recipe, first of all, whatever you're cooking would be dead by the time you got back from the store. But secondly, it's nice to not have to go to the store at that moment. And I know a lot of you live out in the country. And when you live out in the country, you kind of have to, if we used to live in a place where it was 70 miles to go to the grocery store. And it's really nice to have sort of that store that you keep in your stockpile so that you can put off that store visit until later. Plus, you'll save money by not going to the store every time you need one thing.
Yeah.
Although I have to say, Tara, I don't manage the stockpile. Tara does that. But with the things that I kind of manage myself, like certain things in the bathroom, like if I run out of a supplement or something, or I'm about to, I'll keep the empty one to remind myself I need to get more.
Yeah, but that's not hoarding.
No, that's not hoarding.
That's just you're being forgetful.
I'm being forgetful and knowing my limitations.
Is there a pill for that? Because we both need some.
Yeah.
We both need mega doses.
And actually, the thing on that stockpiling, by the way, using it as a store, you can buy a lot of extra of something when it's on sale, and then not have to worry about buying it until the next time it's on sale, and you save a lot of money. I know I've mentioned that before, and Tara has too, but that's one of the best ways to really cut your grocery bill down dramatically. Well, and Tara recently said that a lot of people indicated when she was taking those surveys that the food bill was higher than any other bill, including the housing bill. And if that's the case, these kinds of things are things you can use to really cut that food bill down.
Well, yeah, I mean, my stockpile, because I try to buy nothing that's on sale. I mean, I'll go to Walmart, but I have a sale price. And if Walmart is that price, then I'll just get it at Walmart. But I try to almost always buy everything on sale for the lowest price I can get it. And when I do, like when I get cereal for 70 cents a box, I'll buy 25, 30 boxes of cereal. And you'll say, Tara, that's ridiculous. No, it's not. I buy 25 or 30 boxes of cereal, and then I don't have to buy cereal for 9 months. And I don't.
Actually, 2 weeks.
Dave said actually 2 weeks. Well, yeah, there's some days.
I'm just kidding.
And so I use it a lot just to save money. And that's another thing that people don't see is how much money you can save when you're doing it. So
yeah, because a lot of times we hear, oh, I can't ever buy that because it's so expensive. It is expensive. A lot of things are really expensive if you go to the store and buy them today. But if you happen to see, wow, this is usually $6.99 and today it's $3.99, you say, I'm going to buy 20 of them. I mean, I'm not saying you want to buy everything that the store has, but a lot of times when they have a big sale like that, it's because they have a massive amount of extra inventory and they're trying to move it really fast.
Mm-hmm.
If they're not, if they have a normal amount of inventory or they're short, then they'll usually put a sale on and have a limit because then they're telling you they don't want you to buy a lot of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Vanessa says, if you're expanding your family and due in the winter, it saves both parents a ton of stress knowing they have extra food and baby items on hand instead of having to fight bad weather with a newborn in tow. Yeah. That is brilliant. Actually, it's funny because Tara was already prepared for a lot of things when we were younger, but when our daughter was little, she had a special formula she had to have. And if she
$250 a month,
she couldn't eat anything else. and we ran out of it like at 10 o'clock at night. And the grocery store was 70 miles away. So I ended up having to go to town for that. But that's one of those things where if we had more, at that time, we were just kind of at the beginning stages of doing this kind of stuff. But I think if we had extra that we could just go say, oh, well, we could take one out of the stockpile and then remember the next time we go to the store to buy some extra.
Yeah.
That would have been a good thing for us. And so like what you're saying is it saves a massive amount of stress.
Yeah. Jennifer says, we love Jennifer.
Hi, Jennifer.
People sometimes think you need a garage full to be prepared. I think starting with enough for 2 weeks and then add a little until maybe you have 3 or 4 months, medications and any other daily needs is good for most. Yes. You don't have to start with an entire garage full of stuff. But, you know, we live in Wyoming now. And let me tell you, we're going to be prepared. We never know when we're going to have a storm like we did last week where we had 15 inches of snow and we can't get out. Or like we lost a ton of tree limbs. Mike, you've already taken what, 5 loads?
Mm-hmm.
5 loads. And we probably have at least that amount, if not 6 or 8 more loads to take of tree limbs to the dump. Well, what if some of these trees fell over our driveway and we don't have a big chainsaw yet? For us, we're working on building stuff back up again because some of the stuff we didn't have because we moved and I got rid of a whole bunch of stuff so we wouldn't have to move it. But like I bought an axe the other day because we don't have a chainsaw yet. And I thought, well, man, if one of those trees falls down over our driveway and we can't get out, what are we going to do? And so you never know when you're going to be stuck like that.
Well, and it was interesting with the trees coming down because our whole town, I mean, Wyoming is pretty battle hardened for cold weather. People are pretty sturdy about the cold weather here. But it kind of reminded me of when we were in Kansas, because when all the trees came down like that there, they pulled all the power lines down.
Yeah.
And that's why nobody had power for 3 weeks. And so that's the kind of thing where seeing that made me remember, oh, this is why we try to be prepared for things. So,
yeah.
Everybody
said hi, Jack. Hello.
And Susan says stockpiling would be good in case you lose your job and it keeps you from going constantly to the store. And with COVID, we have less exposure. True.
Yep. Yeah. Will the store let you buy 25 boxes of cereal in one trip? Yep. You could see my video just a couple of weeks ago with me holding the cereal boxes. Yes. Now, I didn't go and clean off the shelves. They had a whole bunch of cereal. So I felt perfectly fine. I didn't feel guilty or anything taking 25 boxes of cereal because they had tons and tons of cereal. So that's all right. Now, here's one thing I would say. I would have at least enough stockpile on hand so that you can get yourself through a garden year. You know, because everybody says, well, grow a garden. Okay, that's fine. But lettuce and radishes are only going to get you so far. And you got to wait 4 months for tomatoes and green beans and cucumbers and pumpkins and squash.
Well, if the disaster happens in September,
you're toast.
You'll need to have some time to be able to. That's what I was saying earlier, is that you're stockpiling to be able to hold yourself until you can come up with another solution. And actually, Genevieve earlier mentioned, I'm not sure who you were if you were talking to us or someone else, Genevieve, but Genevieve was talking about water. And the thing with water is you can't possibly keep enough water on hand for a long time. So we have some water for things like an ice storm. We can't get out of the house for 3 or 4 days. But we also have some water filters that if something big happened and the water system was down for a few weeks, the water filters we have, we can just go drop it in the creek and it filters out everything that's not safe to drink. Mm-hmm. And so water is the kind of thing, I mean, you can live without food for a while, but not really water. Mm-hmm. And so that was one of those things that we early on said we should make sure we have plenty of water filtration capability. And by the way, Genevieve, could you save the wood? I thought you had a fireplace.
We don't have
unfortunately, our fireplace is gas, but we do have some wood, some ability to burn some wood if we needed to. And I actually was cutting all the brush off and keeping all the pieces that were maybe this big around and bigger, which is
Yeah.
a lot. There's a lot of that
Yeah.
that we've been pulling out of that. But the other thing is, when I take that stuff, so here our landfill lets us take it and then they make wood chips out of it. But when we go in, if we take it to the landfill instead of to the green waste dumpsters they have in town, then the landfill will give us a credit for the amount of weight that we brought in, and we can use that for wood chips for gardening in the future. The other thing is, if somebody else brings in logs, like big burnable logs, and they just throw it onto the wood chip pile, then they'll let us unload our brush and put logs on the truck. So either way, we have something useful that we can trade that brush for. And those things are good to know if you're in a situation like that. Ask questions.
So what do you do when you have no money to stockpile? Okay, that was Kevin that asked that. Okay, so first of all, find money. Are there things that you can sell? Are there things that you can do for other people? Could you clean someone's house? Could you mow a lawn? Could you do something just to get some extra money to get it? Secondly, if you're on food stamps, use those food stamps. I had one person email me this week and said, I'm on food stamps and I feel horribly guilty because I only spend $150 a month, but they give me way more food stamps than I need to. So I've been using that for my stockpile. Do not feel guilty using that. This was a single mom. She was being very responsible with her money. That is perfectly okay. Take those extra food stamps, sorry guys, and use them to build your stockpile. If you go to the food pantry, get the extra food that they will give you. Anything extra they'll give you. Ask, say, do you have any extra canned goods or something that you're getting rid of? Even if they're expired, like 6 months. Canned goods will last 5 to 10 years. So get some canned goods. Trade with other people who are low income. Maybe they got, like, I know one lady, she would get a huge box of stuff at the food pantry and she didn't like half of it. So she traded with her neighbors and then they just gave it away to someone else who could use it. See if there's something like that. Can you trade for extra canned goods for somebody for something? Like, could you do yard work or something and someone else has extra canned goods or something like that? There's lots of different ways. You need to just figure out a way to do it. Brooke says, talking about wood chips makes me think of red green wood chipper made from a dryer. Oh man, we're gonna have to look that one up. We haven't seen that one.
I absolutely love red green.
Why? Because
if the women don't find you handsome, they should at least find you handy. Actually, little detail, if you ever need to answer some trivia question that Tara has, that I actually did a thing with red green when I was in PBS, and that was really, really fun. He was hilarious. He was hilarious, not just because the show is scripted, but he actually just kind of did that stuff.
Yeah. Amazing Grace Ranch. I went to the doctor who is a naturopath. He recommends no wheat, no sugar, and a keto, I think she means keto, diet for my migraines. Not a good time for special diets, but I'm tired of fibromyalgia and arthritis. Well, here's the thing. I did the same thing. I was on no dairy. You might cut out dairy also. Wheat, sugar, dairy, corn for me is what I was on. And quite frankly, it was very easy. For breakfast, I had scrambled eggs. For lunch, I had either egg, like egg salad, tuna salad, chicken salad, just ate it on lettuce. Those are all very simple things. Have simple dinners. You can just have a hamburger patty or a piece of chicken with some vegetables. It's actually not that hard. People keep asking me for a keto diet and all this stuff. Guys, it's not expensive and it's not hard. Just stop making it so complicated and just think more simply. I would eat a piece of salmon with some asparagus, or I would have a piece of chicken with a salad. However you need to do it, that's fine. I mean, get my gluten-free, dairy-free cookbook right now, 35% off. By the way, guys, if you want gluten-free, dairy-free, it is, we are so, I don't know who's sharing it, But thank you for sharing it because we are selling these things like hotcakes and I only have like 170 left. We have a new shipment on the way, but our books are sitting right now in Vancouver, just sitting there doing nothing. As a matter of fact, we were like, okay, do we know anybody who's a trucker that we could pay to go get our books for us in Vancouver? So if your husband's a trucker and he quit his job for that thing going around that they're making you get,
The hard part is I think it would be
getting them off the
it would
ship.
be a lot more difficult if it was on the other side of the border. If it could be brought across the border and then we deal with it. We thought we could rent a storage space in northern Washington and like print all the labels and ship everything right
It would
from
be
there and not
great.
have to haul it all back here. Joshua
Yeah.
Talks Food is on. Hi,
How
Joshua.
are you,
We
dude?
really appreciate you.
How are you?
Yeah, Joshua is a young guy and he has a pretty awesome channel.
Do we have
I'll
a wood
share
burning
his-
stove? So
I'll share his link right here.
we do not have a wood burning stove in this house, and honestly, I don't know where we would put one. I mean, if we took out our gas stove in the living room and replaced it with wood, that might work, but I think that's the only place. I would like to just have a backup wood stove somewhere, like in the basement or something, but I don't see how we could get a chimney to work anywhere that would be feasible. So we do not have wood. We do have gas right now that we could turn on as long as gas is still working. So that's at least something.
We do. We could put a chimney in if we needed to, and kind of what we thought about is we are probably going to get a wood stove even if it's not installed because we do know how to install it. But the other thing we had thought about is getting one of those wood stoves that you use when you're camping. I'm not really sure if that would be safe in the house on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Because I mean, obviously anything you burn, you have to vent to the outside, or else, you'll clear all the air out and suffocate yourself. So you have to not be burning things in the house that aren't vented outside. But the camping wood stoves, I'm not really sure if they're super safe. If it was an emergency, we would probably use it when it's vented outside, but we'd have to kind of do that part. And we contemplated maybe buying one of those while we're waiting to get the other wood stove. So, especially since we live in Wyoming where it gets cold in the winter.
Yeah. Thanks, Diane. She gave us Bible money. Thank you so much. Yeah, guys, we are still shipping out Bibles like crazy. Bibles and gluten-free. That's all we got in stock, but we're shipping it out.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. We are shipping about, maybe 50 to 60 Bibles a week now. So, Mike, you should get your CDL and then you could rent a truck and go get the books.
Actually, it's funny because
we had thought about getting a U-Haul or something. Actually, here's what we thought about doing. And I thought about this. Mike brought the same thing up today. So I'm like, this is a word from the Lord. Let's just go to the dock, find our books, pre-print all the shipping labels, slap them on the books, and at least get them shipped from there so that everybody who's been waiting since July, guys, we are so incredibly sorry. We truly appreciate your patience with this. We truly do. We thought we were ahead of the game by ordering them in May. We didn't need them till the end of July or August. And we thought we were just ahead of the game and we were just on it.
Well,
And
initially
then it just all went downhill.
we were thinking that the first batch would be here in the middle of September. So it's funny though, because Jayhawk Girl Mike said, is the one that you quoted, Mike, you should get a CDL license and then you could rent a truck. It's funny because I was thinking to myself, we were thinking, we should see if we could find a driver with a truck and see if we can bypass the freight forwarder and just pick it up in Seattle and drive it here. But then I got to thinking, even if I had to do the training for a CDL and get the license, it would still potentially be worth it to get them.
Hey, Tim. So my cousin Tammy is on here and her two brothers are both truckers. And I was like, okay, could I pay my cousins? If we can get the books to Seattle, could I pay my cousins to go out there for me and pick them up?
Kathy Bulmer has a CDL.
Oh, do you really, Kathy? Oh, wow.
Wow. Well, yeah, the thing is, there's a lot of cost tied up in the books when we're not able to ship them. So if we could figure out a way to short circuit the problem. Right now, the main thing is they can't unload the boats. So it's in Vancouver waiting its turn to go to Seattle.
Okay, so we're going to say something here real quick. She's in her apron. Hello, Kimmy.
Hi, Kimmy.
I don't think you got my email. I sent you an email like 2 weeks ago now. But Kimmy said, we're waiting for certain supplies to finish next year's planners. I think a lot of people and companies are just waiting. It's hard to be patient. So Kimmy gave me the name of her planner place. And so now that explains a lot, Kimmy, because they have not gotten back to me. So I'm like, what's going on? We are not going to have 2022 planners, guys. I'm really super sorry. Kimmy has a really nice one. I hate to not sell you something, but if I'm going to sell you, I'm going to sell you Kimmy's because hers is almost as good as mine. Just kidding. No, she has a really good one, guys.
Fabulous planner.
If she can get hers in. But this is the official announcement that we are not going to get the 2022 planners this year. I am super sorry. Kimmy's printer was my last ditch effort, and I just could not. I just can't get them. We tried, and we just couldn't do it. So,
well, to be honest, I guess I can't blame some people for not being aware because I wasn't aware until I finally discovered how our books aren't coming, and how they're not going to be coming, and starting to see the picture of why they're not coming. That made me realize, wow, this is a good time to be prepared because a lot of products won't be able to get to the stores. And so like if you're like Tar was saying that the boys are, well, and I just haven't thought about it, but that the boys have been reluctant to say what they might want for Christmas. But the thing is, if you're buying something and you want to give it to somebody at a certain time, then probably need to be doing that now.
yeah.
I told you guys what I want, but it's just too much.
Dave wants a one wheel for Christmas.
Oh,
but
does
I
he?
ain't spending $1,000 on a one wheel for one kid a Christmas present. We don't spend $1,000 on everybody for Christmas.
But that's the only Christmas present I want.
Yeah, still ain't spending $1,000 on a Christmas present. Oh my goodness.
Well, Genevieve, could you sell the planner as a self-printable PDF? We probably will do the PDF version.
Maybe. I don't know. We'll have to see.
We have an undated one, and the dated one, we'll have to guess. We'll have to see how many people bought the version before. So, because if we do the work to typeset it for the ebook version, but only 10 people buy it, then it would have cost us a lot more.
Yeah.
Then it was worth to do that. But that might be something we could still considering.
But here's another thing, guys, that we need to address. When things get rough, you may have to adapt and change the way you do things. So like Kimmy and I are both having issues with getting our products to be able to sell. That's a major problem for our small businesses. But you know what? We are working on other ways to keep our income going. And we've even been able to build our income by doing different things. So we're focusing more on getting our YouTube videos going, and they're going crazy and they're doing really, really well. As a matter of fact, we've improved our YouTube channel 5 times what it was 3 weeks ago, just from some of the stuff that we've been learning about how to do YouTube and that kind of thing. And so the same goes with prepping, stockpiling, that kind of thing. Crises. When a crisis happens, you're not going to be able to eat the same thing you want to eat all the time. You may have to be careful. You may have to change what you eat. My mother may have to have a bean touch her lips. Actually, to my mother's defense, we were super, super poor growing up after my dad left, and she never touched a bean. And really, the problem I see is not that it can't be done, but that people just don't want to do it. Because growing up, we really didn't have a problem eating or anything. I mean, there was one point where we were $7 worth of groceries, but mom was still just a week. But mom was still really careful in what she bought, and we still ate healthy. we never got sick until we got really sick with our CFS, but that's just a fluke. I mean, that was, that wasn't just, we didn't just have coughs and colds all the time or anything like that. So you may have to adapt and overcome and do things a little bit differently. So yes, Carol's Cottage, we do have an undated planner. You can go here and find our ebooks right here. And we have the undated planner there that you can get, and you can put in your own dates right there. So my whole point in that is that you're going to have to maybe, like Dinah says, I had to give up steak, the one food I could eat 3 times a day. Yeah. I mean, if you're eating steak right now, then you're not going to be eating steak for long. So yeah, but anyway, Amelia, have I seen the small wood stove, a bill of Live Simple, Live Free, and put into their house? Yes, I kind of know them a little bit. And I have thought about trying to get one of their little wood stoves.
I don't know if you mentioned it, but Jennifer had said improvise, or no, she said adapt and overcome. I always heard it improvise, adapt and overcome because of Heartbreak Ridge. Anyway, but nevertheless, it's besides stockpiling and saving and trying to anticipate problems, it's also helpful to learn things that you might be able to use to adapt and improvise when things happen, because you can't really anticipate every possible problem, but if you have skills and you're creative, you can a lot of times solve a problem that you don't have the supplies for. So that's something I thought I might mention.
So Karen says Jill will not eat vegetables or bean. How is this woman still alive? Well, and she's still alive with pretty good health, actually, because it has nothing to do with what you eat. It really doesn't. I mean, you can do all this, but when people stress about food, it's the stress about food that's causing the problem. It's not actually the food. There is absolutely nothing wrong with eating a traditional American diet. It's when you eat a traditional American diet that's 2,000 calories and you need to be eating 1,500 calories a day. It's a traditional American diet when you are eating 3,000 calories a day and you're supposed to be eating 1,800 calories a day. That's where the problem is. It really doesn't have anything to do with that. So, and yes, she has been to the doctor and had all of her tests and everything, and she's, actually very healthy. Is Dave doing better? Dave, are you doing better?
Nope.
Yes, he is. He was harassing his brother yesterday, so Dave has turned the corner.
That's how we knew he was going to make it.
Dave has turned the corner. The poor guy's been sick for 4 weeks. Feel so bad for him. But Cindy, she just put her veggie garden to bed. I'm now rereading your cookbooks 1 and 2, pondering how I can make the most of my harvest. You go, girl. That's great. Wow. Okay.
Wow. Kathy said, I learned to make bean burgers because you never know when you might need to know how.
Yeah.
Yeah. We used to have apple trees in Idaho, and we didn't plant them, and we didn't even do that much to them except just water them, right? And trim them.
Well, I mean, I fertilized them and stuff, but yeah.
But we would still, at the end of the season, we would get every single apple that we could get off that tree and save them. Or we would freeze them at the time, but however you can do that.
Yes, Diana, we do know that we can't just send a trucker to Canada right now, which is absolutely ridiculous. But we were thinking if we could just get them on this side of the United States, or get them to the United States.
See, there was a delay, and now they're in Vancouver and now Canada, and there's supposed to be a delay getting them to Seattle. And then once they're in Seattle, there may be a delay getting them on a truck to get them here. But once they're in Seattle, it's in the U.S. and we don't have to do anything special. That's where we were thinking if it was going to be more weeks, like a lot more weeks before the trucks could come, then we could just send somebody or take ourselves or whatever if we were able to get a truck or driver or whatever.
which would be great. And we
I'll start the Make Jill Eat a Bean petition. Who wants to sign? I'd like to see that.
what was I gonna say now?
I can just imagine the expression on your face, mother-in-law.
Oh, brother, I can just imagine.
SH says, foraging is also a good way to supplement your diet. It collects black walnuts, berries, persimmons, etc. That's kind of cool because when we lived in Idaho, we found a lot of things in our garden that when we moved in that were already there. And then we found people that were clearing, just hacking things out of their garden. And Tara found one guy who was just getting rid of a bunch of rhubarb, and she asked him, and we went and got rhubarb starts from him. And there were a lot of times people that we were able to get garden things from. But also, we discovered that in one area where we would sometimes go, there were just giant, were they blackberry bushes, right? Blackberry bushes everywhere. And so we just went and collected buckets and buckets of blackberries. The thing is, if there's
froze them and made jam and everything.
Yeah, so as far as the foraging part goes, like berries and nuts and things like that, if you know what they are and they're good, then by all means, I mean, that would stretch things for you for sure.
Yeah.
And for us at the time, we didn't have a lot of money, so it was pretty amazing to be able to eat blackberries because they were too expensive in the store.
Does Dave have that thing going around? I don't know. We didn't test him. We took him to the doctor because we thought he might be getting a pneumonia, but he refuses to believe it was that.
The thing with Dave is
Dave is always getting sick like that, though. So
this is the same thing I've had for the last 10 years.
Yes.
Almost every fall he ends up having
every
something
fall and
that's
spring and
pretty
winter
severe for a while. And I used to get something like that, not as bad as him, but I think some of the supplements I'm on are preventing me from getting things as bad as I used to. But he didn't have the right symptoms for that. So
Southern Prairie says, yes, we got elderberries for free in Florida. They go wild. Oh, that would be great. So
yeah,
that would be great. Yeah. Okay. So let's see. Yeah. And don't forget to stockpile deodorant, toothpaste, socks, underwear, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, guys. I mean, really, I wouldn't, I wouldn't forget all of that if you can. So
all the boys don't get what Dave has. Generally, he just seems to be the one that's more susceptible
I'm
to
the
that.
weak stick in the family.
He's the weak stick in that department.
he's the weak, but he's such a handsome weak stick. We love him.
So in school, he was the one that we always struggled because they sometimes were saying he can't be gone one more day. And we were thinking, sorry, can't send him when he's doing that bad. So
yeah.
Yep.
All right, guys, don't forget to check out Dining on a Dime cookbooks. We have gluten-free, about 175 or so, I don't know, in stock still, but I'm selling a lot of them, guys, quick. They are on order though, and pre-order 35% off everything. Guys, we are trying to get them here as fast as possible, but you know how that is, so please be patient. Thank you. That's why we're giving you an extra 10% off, because we want you to be prepared with the best prepping cookbook you need. This really is the best prepping cookbook, guys. I mean, it tells you how to make everything. Bread, taco seasoning. Volume 2 has how to make cough syrup and elderberry syrup, everything. Please visit us at livingonadime.com. We will see you guys next time. Friday, we will have Mom's video on answering your questions on how she ended up with such a gross house.
Thanks so much for being here, and we'll talk to you later. Bye. You wrapped that really fast. I was surprised.